Welcome to another chapter of In the Keep podcast. I'm your very own prophet of the drowned god, the Motherlode. This show is all about the world of first-person shooters, their legacies, their lineage, and the people who keep that world turning. It is the will of the drowned god Cathala that our communities band together to frag and jib one another into oblivion for all eternity. What is there to be said about today's guest that hasn't already been said before? I mean, Jehar, his body of work speaks for itself. TastySpleen is just an incredible channel that everyone who's into arena shooters should be following. I can't imagine that you're a fan of this genre and haven't already heard of Jehar. So if this is your first time hearing from him, wow, am I honored to be bringing you the gift that is Jehar and TastySpleen and RottenRose and everyone attached to that. It's just such an incredible journey that he's been on. He's a guy who has just been everywhere, done everything, had a lot of amazing experiences, and just a name that is synonymous with our community and with what we do here. So I personally am very happy to share this conversation with you guys. It was a real honor for me to get to sit down with, one of my heroes and really just kind of get into it with him about a lot of cool topics. I think we broke down a lot. So hopefully you enjoy the next hour or so. Put all of your stressors in real life aside just a while. Go out for a walk if you can, or whatever it is that you're doing. Just have a good, positive time while you listen to this. And I really hope you enjoy it. The music is by Immorpher, the man behind all of the coolest dark ambient music from all of your favorite Quake map packs and jams. I just can't tell you enough how much I enjoy this dark ambient shit. He's so cool, and go follow him on his Bandcamp page. But hey, stay tuned for a couple of announcements after this interview, but otherwise, without any further ado, let's get in the keep with Jehar. It's been a long time coming to have you on the show. You're in my opinion, probably the most obvious guest to be on In the Keep. So I don't really have a good excuse other than I just wanted to wait until there was more people listening to the show and I had a body of content to say hey, Jehar, I think you'd really dig this shit. It's cool. And here we are.
Yeah, and I'm really impressed with the people you've been having on. People like Dump Truck and a lot of mappers and a lot of other people in the community. So you've actually cast a really wide net when it comes to content creators and producers and just competitors and all kinds of good shit. So yeah, I get the same feeling when doing something like Mappers Markets. There's a few things that have been on the back burner for a while, and then I think I don't want to do that yet. I want to get a few more episodes under the belt. Yeah, so yeah. I get that impulse.
So here we are, dude. Can you kind of give us just a brief little snippet background of how you got into arena shooters in the first place? When was the first time you played one?
Every time I get asked that, it ends up feeling like a little bit longer ago because it crosses some threshold, right? From being this thing that you've been doing for a few years to something you've been doing for the bulk of your adult life. And I'm certainly past that point now. But no, Quake 2, I guess, would take the credit for actually getting me into anything competitive when it comes to shooters. Before that, I was part of a X-Wing versus TIE Fighter clan, which was competitive in some respect on MSN Gaming Zone. But no, when it comes to shooters, Quake 2 was the one that attracted me when it comes to being able to get some maps on a server and getting people to play. So that was attractive. And it was a Quake 2 clan member who convinced me to come to Quakecon when I was 18. And that's all it takes. If anybody is out there who hasn't been to Quakecon, well, I'm sorry about this year because it's not happening, but everything changes once you actually start meeting people. and being in the same sweaty, dank room with them. It goes from being a hobby to being something that you are.
I don't think anyone's more like an example of like that's who you are than you, man. You've created a kind of a brand around yourself of like that's the guy. You want to talk about arena shooters, you want to talk about it, like watch any awesome competitive shit. Like, well, TastySpleen, Jehar, like the people that revolve around that circle right there. I mean, I got a chance to go to Quakecon last year and see you do your shit, and it's like you're legit motherfucking professional at that stuff. It's like watching for me a master painter or something, just kind of go at it. And you really like that's how I felt. I'm like, man, he's so good at what he does. Like the facial expressions he makes when he's frustrated.
I'm really
like,
glad it comes off that way because Quakecon is always, like I said, going there when I was 18. The Quakecon experience for me has changed over the years, and for a long time, I would be talking to people who were older and maybe a little bit wiser and go like, it sucks how cynical they are now. Like, I never want to be like that. And here we are. But no, I'm glad it still comes off like that because, yeah, it is still really satisfying to get a show off. It's always such a huge challenge. It is such a chaotic environment. But a lot of Quake players are actually really, really helpful when it comes to keeping things calm and somewhat in control. So yeah, last year was actually really cool. It's something I would like to see happen again, because it was the first time ever that there was actually like a broadcast booth in the BYLC with PA on. And even when they brought the PA speakers, I was like, what are you doing? You can't plug those in. There's no speakers in the BYLC. That's not allowed. And then I realized like, okay, that's what's going to happen. And I was like really nervous because, people are sitting like right next to those speakers and I thought it was going to be a problem. But no, we ended up having Quake World tournaments and Quake 2 tournaments and Quake Live tournaments and all kinds of good shit. And it was great. And I didn't really get to see it from where I was sitting, but I had seen videos that other people had recorded, and there were people like, sitting down in all the chairs and people standing further out into the penumbra of the darkness. And it was really cool. And nothing like that had ever really happened at QuakeCon, not in my memory, because for a long time, the tournament area had been kind of sequestered from the rest of the event. And there would be QuakeCons where I'm in like a dark closet for 4 days and I don't see anybody else. And I certainly don't get to see the BYLC. I remember there were years where I would like make a point of on Friday night, take 20 minutes before the exhibitor hall closes and go check that out. And that would be my BYLC time for the year. So this year's was a vast improvement when it came to seeing people like you. And it was a lot more connected and a lot more real. And it was a good change, and it's a pity that QuakeCon isn't happening this year.
I really loved it. Like I was sitting right there and crisscross applesauce across from you guys, just watching y'all do your thing, and that was like a really amazing experience for me because I really didn't understand Doom PvP before then. Like I'd always played like Quake 3 and stuff like that, but I always looked at Doom PvP and thought like, that's kind of fucking dumb. And then I met Devastation and talking to him and really got to understand like what he was going into. And he, had me reading the Doom Bible literally while I was sitting there in between matches, like to try to like understand what he was doing. And I watched those guys play, like him and J-Kist and just that whole crew and rolling around with Dewsum and Human Bones and everybody, and really kind of fell in love with the Doom community on top of just forget about the games themselves, like just amazing people and such a wide array of people that are just all hanging out together that you would never think. These are the kids that would probably beat each other up in high school, but they're all the same kind of dork.
Yeah, and that's another thing that kind of changes over time too, right? These goes from people that you know online to people that you kind of hang out with more outside of the context of a tournament, and before you know it, you're having dinner in somebody's house with their family and kids, and you go, how did life end up like this? But it's cool. It's really neat and gratifying, and especially people like Devastation. Like, yeah, if you want to get excited about anything, go talk to that guy, and he'll get you hyped up. He's great. He's like the only guy in Nova Scotia I know, but he represents well.
I think he's the only guy there. Like, I don't think there's any other people in Nova Scotia.
He's the guy. It's a good thing he's a Doom player then. We got lucky.
Yeah, well, that whole experience was amazing. Like the networking that you can get done at conventions like that is also just fantastic. I mean, that was amazing for me. It was just
I remember even like early back with like the Quake Live TV crew. Some of those guys I haven't spoken to in years. I really should reach out. But you know, we'd be wiring stuff up under a stage, and a guy who didn't know this other guy would start talking to the other guy, and pretty soon, you know, they're talking about like, oh, well, you should come by the office and blah 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 blah, and it turns into like a job real quick. And actually, all of the professional experience in broadcasting that I got not only started at Quakecon, but actually was elevated because a tournament manager at Quakecon got me in touch with a guy that I worked for 7 years doing broadcast, and that all funneled back into Quakecon, of course. So yeah, meet people. It's cool.
How did you?
And really,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, how did you kind of become the guy there? Like, because there's a lot of people involved and everything, and then you sort of took over that niche after a while, and it became like.
I don't know if there's anything really required other than being there and seeing what happens. I can't explain it any more intelligently than that. And it is always a group thing. That's kind of the beautiful thing about it, is when it comes to online things, especially, you know, there's going to be somebody for whatever task, for whatever minutia thing that needs to exist. There's going to be somebody who's obsessive enough about it to get it done. So usually, if you need like a weird mod that does something very particular, or if you need, you know, a wiring diagram for something very obscure, somebody's done it and you can find it. And that's always been kind of the strength of the Quake community, is, you know, especially early on when competitive mods weren't officially supported, you know, Orange Smoothie and you know, CPM and OpenTDM and things like that. The community would kind of not always unanimously, but kind of collaborate on what everybody agreed the rules were, and mods would get created and tournaments would come out of that, and maps would support the tournaments. And, you know, no matter what your skill set was, you know, there would be something for you to do. And the same thing applies for QuakeCon. You know, if you go just to hang out, very soon, I'm pretty sure that'll turn into more than just that, as I'm sure you've realized.
Definitely. Yeah. I just went like, oh, I guess I'm going to go do this thing. I had some friends to meet up with, and it very quickly became like, yeah, just schmoozing the whole time. Like, I didn't sit at my computer more than 5 minutes. I think I set it up and then I let my friend borrow it, and I never came back. Like, I was just running around the whole time. I think it's sitting down was pretty rare. For pretty much as soon as I woke up, I'd sleep like 4 hours. I'd be hungover and I'd get up and down some coffee and just get after it again. I think I came home and told my wife, like, that was the best damn 4 days of my life. I think I just felt at home.
That stings, because you said hungover, and I was like, oh, this was the year I was going to drink more. I was going to work less and drink more. That was like my plan. And then, you know, the world ends. So we're doing a lot of talk about an event that is not happening this year.
Well, it's a culture. It's not just an event, you know?
Yeah, you're right. And it's a culture that extends from the online culture. And that's the totally unkillable thing about it.
So how does one kind of become a broadcast engineer? Like, what got you into that niche? Was it just a focus on the arena shooter shit? Like, I want to broadcast this stuff, and then it happened for you? Or did you seek that out earlier on to any extent?
Well, when it comes to the game stuff, I've never really been interested in things beyond what I'm interested in. You know, like, I've always wanted to do Quake because Quake is interesting. Doom is interesting. The splash damage games are interesting. And hilariously enough, a lot of the games that I thought would be interesting never got so much as a spectator mode. So, but when it comes to the broadcast side of it, it was Quake. Again, going back to QuakeCon, 2009. I met up with Grease Scotsman and Slava and Matcom and Cymek and Fear and the rest of the Quake Live TV guys. And I was actually supposed to do some filming there for somebody else, but I couldn't find them. So they just said, hey, hang out with us. And I had been doing like a little bit of radio stuff by that point. And they said, hey, you've been doing a little bit of radio stuff, right? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, here's the mic. Let's do a game together. And that was it. So part of it was like kind of the technical side of it. That's kind of a bug that bites you. But that's like 30% of it. 70% of it has to be just the fact that they were like, hey, let's do this together and let's put on a show, and everything evolves from that.
So then you end up just over time accumulating all the tools of the trade. You got like multiple PCs and capture cards.
It's a bug because you actually, the first capture card I got was donated by Mr. Green, I believe. It was a little S-Video capture card. And after Quakecon that year, we went back and we did some demo casts for the Warsaw tournament there in 640 by 480 at 768 kbit. And you're like, this is cool, but wouldn't this be better? And as soon as you can afford the thing that would be better, you get that. And that never stops. You eventually have to make rules for yourself. Like, the next thing I buy has to be twice as expensive as the last thing I got, because it needs to be like a significant enough upgrade that it's worth the money.
For me, it's like
I should be happy.
You just spend these hours, researching like what's even fucking worth your money or worth having, or like, is there a different way to do it, or is there an app that does the whole job for you that you wouldn't have to worry about? Oftentimes, it's like microphone. That's what it is.
Even over the last 10 years, like, that stuff has gotten so much easier. It is ridiculous how much access prosumers have to really good gear now when it comes to lighting, and of course LEDs help out a lot there. When it comes to audio, when it comes to video capture. At the time, we were doing S-Video capture because HDMI capture cards were well into the 4 digits easily. And then Blackmagic came out with their $199 HDMI capture card, and that blew things up. So companies like Blackmagic, for a while, we didn't have anything like OBS. XSplit was kind of the first on there to be kind of at that level. But before that, you had Flash Media Live Encoder, which didn't do any vision mixing at all. You had VidBlaster, which sucks and still does. The software is a lot easier now. The hardware is more affordable. It's all pretty good stuff. So, there's never been a better time to get into broadcast at any level. And
then you end up doing all these crazy overlays and everything. Like you got to really consider a lot of things when it's going on. And I'm just at the tip of the iceberg, trying to get into that kind of stuff. And I wouldn't even say like pursuing it professionally or anything, but I just wanted to try it and see what we could do with that. And, working with you on stuff like Take the Crown was like eye-opening, because I realized when I look at my shit and then I'm like, okay, well, we're going to pass the stream off to Jehar. And then I look at your shit and I'm like, fuck, they should have been watching his crap the whole time. Like,
well, it's fun, right? Because if you have something you can play with, you will. And I actually have another Quake guy to thank for a lot of this. I think he was working with James on some of the Diabotical stuff for a while. Hugo Martin. He introduced me to vMix like 7 years ago or something, and I've never looked back. vMix is a fantastic company. Another company like Blackmagic out of Australia, and their stuff is just better than anything else. And ironically enough, or maybe even appropriately, I will do gigs that involve proper broadcasting studios. Some of your 3-letter broadcasting studios, and I will see a laptop running vMix for some purpose or another, and I will see another laptop running OBS to do an encoding job, and all of the hardware that these massive studios have are very quickly getting condensed into one machine or 2 machine jobs. And it's pretty fascinating to me, but it's also gratifying knowing that, the stuff that I'm familiar with as an amateur is now becoming the stuff that everybody is using. So that's a good little bit of an ego stroke, but also fortuitous for anybody who has been doing that stuff.
And are you shopping out like artwork and overlays to other people, or like community contributors?
Oh God, I need to. I really need to. I'm so bad at that. The only reason I got into anything concerning graphic design was I didn't have anybody to do it for me. And I do have fun doing it. I do. I don't feel like I need to delegate too much. If anything, like I would probably prefer to spend more time on the art side of it. But no, I really do need to get better about, finding people to help with some of these things and kind of push it in a broader direction. I really need to get like commercials done. Little like 30-second segments to do spots for other shows while doing one show, and give me time to push buttons while that's going on. It's a really big wish list. For years and years, I really did try to turn TSTV into like a fully staffed out thing. The thing I found difficult with that, and this isn't anybody's fault, it's just the way people work, is most people are interested in one game more than any others.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes to that game, it's got all their attention, and when it comes to other games, there's less attention. And again, that's just a perfectly natural dynamic. I don't misunderstand that at all. But it has made it difficult, kind of keeping and a lot of that responsibility is on me too, right? Because I'm not the most organized when it comes to that stuff, and I probably could be more, but it makes me just really thankful to be able to get done what we do get done between all the different games.
No, I'm really sympathetic to your struggle with that. Like that's sort of how the key works, is that there's me, I'm just like the guy with the microphone, but then there's several other people, like amazing people who are like a volunteer force. And we got like a graphics guy or two graphics guys, and we've got people who just do like
shit's good.
Connecting, well, I'm trying. Thank you so much. But that's what it's like. Everybody's just trying to contribute whatever talent they kind of have. And I'm learning on the fly, and they are too. And it's just people who are passionate about it. But at the end of the day, I've seen your face on broadcast before, and I'm like, yeah, I know that feeling where it's like, I know at the end of the day, I'm the one who really, really like cares and is going to live or die on this. Like that's what it is. Like there's other people who want to contribute up to a certain extent, and no qualms about that, no bitterness whatsoever ever. If you just only care about Doom, I'm happy that you exist, because when I would need something for Doom, I'm going to call Human Bones. Like if I need something for another game, if I need something for like Reflex or whatever, Crazy Al, how you doing? That kind of thing is really useful to have. But it's fun, but it's also quite challenging, and can be sometimes kind of demoralizing to like realize that you're kind of out on your own here, and you've got to make it happen. So I see both sides of the coin, but I think that you can, if anyone can do that, you can do it.
The only factor that causes a little bit of anxiety, and I don't really know what to do about this, is the feeling that if you're not doing like a Doom 2 tournament or a Quake World tournament or something, who is? And I see you doing like Doom 2 stuff, and I see other people doing like Quake World stuff and Quake 2 stuff, and I'm like, good, because there was a period for a while where I would have to be inactive for one reason or another, and admittedly I'm a little bit inactive at the moment. I'm hoping to change that soon. And you just go, there's like all these tournaments going on, and nobody's covering it, and it's just like, somebody needs to be doing that. But fortunately, as the gates are widening when it comes to hardware and software, that is less and less of a problem. You are seeing things like Quake World tournaments get broadcast more often, and Doom 2 tournaments get broadcast more often, and that is always going to be important.
On that same note, the big thing that just like hits me in the gut and makes me like want to throw up when I'm going to sleep at night is like knowing that someone did stream it and they're never going to upload it to anything, and so it's just going to go away. So like the sheer number of people that could see it if it were like, if you just put it on YouTube, like I know how many people watch Warfork videos because all of them belong to me, and it's way more than people that watch the stream on Twitch. And that's translating to right. It's translating to people wanting to play like a game like Warfork, which is like this weird fork of Warsaw that's like gonna become kind of something else over time, but we'll see. But I just love it. I love that game, and a lot of people do. But we got to do when it's a grassroots things like that, we've got to make sure that it is being broadcast and it is being put out there, because the people developing it don't have a PR team. That's just not a luxury they're going to have. So I see that as a responsibility.
I definitely sympathize with that, especially when it comes to some of these like indie projects, which have a very peculiar and at this point a little bit of a predictable life cycle. There's a point where a lot of stuff is getting done, and then there's a point where not a whole lot is getting done, and everybody's kind of glancing around the room and maybe at the door, and you see that happen time and time again. It happened with Warsaw before Warfork even, which was a pity, because Warsaw was really like the first game to take an existing Quake engine and just modernize the bits that needed modernizing. Things like format support and map support and stuff like that. But yeah, I totally get that. But I think things are going in a good direction. I think there was a period, just taking Quake World as an example, because there was a long time where there were no Quake World broadcasts, and back when I was getting started, like not a whole lot of broadcasts were happening for Quake stuff anyway, so it was all kind of new to everybody. But when it comes to Quake World, I think a lot of those people are getting to a point where they have a little bit more time and disposable income than they had maybe in the last decade. And so you're seeing more content coming out of that, just because people are kind of like settling down with life, and if they have 4 hours to spend on a tournament, then they can do that no problem. It's tough to do it at scale, right? Yeah, and that's always the big question, is like, how do we? What's the next step after doing a 40-man tournament? How do we get that to 80, and how quickly does that fall down if a game day happens and 10 people don't show up and stuff like that? So I think there's always going to be those opposing forces, but I think largely positive.
Unfortunately, I think it's money. I think there's I think that's what it comes down to, is if there's money involved, suddenly people are like willing to do a lot of shit they weren't willing to do before. And so when I talk to a guy like BPS,
you say volunteer stuff, and there's a lot of things that a lot of people will volunteer for. Admin work, no problem. Schlepping people around and making sure they're all in the same room, no problem. Video editing, no, that's something you want to pay for. And I think as more people figure that out and more people make those kinds of agreements with each other over time, and not in like a like monolithic company way, but just as a community, I think a lot of cool things will happen out of that
over time, for sure. And I mean, we see it with like Civi, right? There's a pretty good example, not arena shooter stuff, but just like the retro boomer shooter shit, and his show in the course of 2 years now, something maybe a little over that, he brings on Katie, and then all of a sudden, like, the audio is better, the video quality is better, and it's like this fucking happening thing. And you think for a moment, like, this kind of game doesn't get any views ever. No one cares about this shit. And then you see, oh man, he's got like 186,000 fucking followers or whatever. Like, yeah. So it's not.
I was really happy when he came around, because he was doing a lot of the stuff that I thought should have existed. Him and Decino for sure. And Decino was able to organize like these massive, subscriber, FFA events and stuff like that. And I think that's really, really cool. But yeah, I think the bar for production value is just going to go up, but also the accessibility to make something that looks that good is also going to get easier as well. So, it's all the fears of, oh my God, if I don't do something every day, the entire scene is going to collapse. That fear is going away. The
next kind of little branch I want to go on to with you is, I think you were asked this question probably, I think it was Dump Truck, and I felt kind of disappointed with your answer. So, shoutcasting to you, like, because you have this tendency to say shit like, oh, like, it just not that big a deal or whatever. But like, you're particularly good at what you do. Like, I've sat in a Discord channel and next to you in the booth and heard you talk about Quake World, which was a perfect example of something where you're just spouting off this unbelievable muscle memory of knowledge and really making it easy for someone like me, because a couple of years ago, I never even fucking heard of Quake World. And I watched you as a broadcaster talk about it and really suck me in and make me feel passionate about this game. So that's a talent. And I want to know what's in the sauce.
Now I'm like, shit, I gotta come up with a better answer.
Come up with something good, man. Pressure's on.
I really do wish I had a better answer. It is fun. That is what's at the core of it. It's really neat and exciting. And I guess growing up, you listen to people like DJ Wheat, and they kind of have the same vibe to them, where you can hear how much fun they're having with it. And I guess I listened to a lot of stuff like MXC and I guess Coupon had the announcers in there, and stuff like NBA Jam, stupid shit like that.
Yeah.
And there's kind of this vibe to it that's fun to recreate. Beyond that, I don't have a whole lot of conscious thought about it. I guess when I was getting into it, I would read a lot from people like Red Eye, who had a lot of really good advice. There was a physical magazine for a little bit, Pro Gamer, where articles like that would show up, and I wish that kind of like really practical stuff would show up more. And then, with Quake Live TV, like the barrier for it was so low. Like, who else is going to do it if you're not doing it? So, in some respects, it didn't matter how bad I was, which I guess was liberating. And so I didn't really have much to worry about. And by the time, there was something to worry about, years had gone by, and anything I'd improved on, I guess I could just chalk up to just doing it like every other night for several years. I guess something has to come out of that, right? You would hope. I don't know. And for a while, there was a lot of pushback against commentators, and on ESR, this was a constant debate of, do you want to listen to somebody who is doing a lot of play-by-play and just like keeping the rhythm and not saying anything particularly insightful, but just, doing the NBA Jam shit? Or do you want somebody who's able to analyze it more and break it down more? And with Quake, that's always been tough, right? Because if you look at Counter-Strike, you have the Counter-Strike's kind of made for TV. It's kind of paced out for it. You have all these periods of like low amounts of action where you can analyze a little bit more. You have periods between rounds where you can do a little bit of a recap. With Quake, it's always happening. The only time I've ever done instant replay for my broadcast is with Quake Champions, back when round-based duel was the thing, because in between rounds is when you could, shove in a replay. But traditionally, if it's CTF or duel or TDM or whatever, that's 10 or 20 minutes of just uninterrupted action. So you don't really get to do anything like that, and you don't really get to process what's going on. So there have been a lot of back and forth over the years of what kinds of things people want to listen to, and I never really worried about it too much. I guess another part of it would be that for a long time I was doing stuff just by myself, so there's nobody to really compare myself to or bounce off of. But you get people like Fistix or Wheat or Grease Scotsman on there, and you do kind of have to pay attention to what the other guy's doing. I guess I should take the lesson that that I took by mentioning Red Eye's articles on really practical stuff and come up with some more practical things to say. But when it comes to Doom and Quake in particular, I think even good advice and maybe the inability to follow good advice should not keep you from getting on the mic. If you want to be on the mic, just do it. Everything else will come later. But right now, and I think perpetually, the biggest thing is just going to be, if we can have another tournament like the Take the Crown tournament, where there's 3 streams going on for a Doom 2 tournament, that is objectively good. At some point, I don't care if there's 6 streams and 3 of them are guys who have never shoutcasted before. Like, 6 streams is awesome. So I guess that's been some of my reluctance to be like, oh yeah, you got to do this and you got to do that, and you got to have this mic and you got to talk like this and you got to do that, because at some point, like, the most important thing is just to be there.
It was pretty interesting, and it's something that you kind of brought up in passing there, is that you do spend a lot of time doing it by yourself, and you mentioned the different styles of commentary and what people prefer. So for me, it's like, it's pro wrestling. That's exactly what I think of when I think about I think about, like the 90s, like Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler doing their kind of back and forth, because you have one guy who's a professional like sports analyst who doesn't really play the sport, and you have another guy who's a veteran wrestler, and that's kind of the combo, the killer combo. But with you, it's like you're doing it by yourself. You're doing basically both jobs, and like I'm assuming you don't play Quake on the level that like Locktar plays Quake, but when you talk about it sounds like you're a fucking expert.
Years ago, I made a choice a long time ago about what I was going to be better at, and it was the thing that was easier for me. No, I completely agree, and there's a lot of that kind of bombacity and kind of artificial overhypeness that's kind of fun too, right? And that's not everybody's cup of tea. Like, some people want to treat Quake like golf or like chess or something, and be able to break it down and take it very seriously, because it is very serious. And I respect that a lot. I can't tell them that they're being silly, but personally, I get a lot of kicks out of all of the MXC and NBA Jam and like you mentioned, pro wrestling stuff, where it is a lot of loud yelling and it might be nonsense, but it's fun.
It's entertainment. It's we're trying to get somebody to watch something. That's what it is. Suck them in. However you do it, whatever your path is. I'm not judging the next guy. Too bad. I mean, sometimes it's like, man, I can't believe what people will do to get people to watch their shit. But whatever. It's not for me to judge. I'm proud that anyone, especially if it's Quake or Doom or anything like this at all, I've seen you doing the Doombringer stuff, and like you'll go out on a limb, really to broadcast some stuff that really would not be covered if it wasn't for you or someone like us. So it's really cool to watch you do that and be like giving back to the community.
Projects like that are happening all the time. Things like Doombringer are happening all the time. The fact that it's Christus, he's got all of my respects since from when I was like 12 years old. But things like Warfork, Doombringer, Reflex would be in that category. Everybody's trying something, and everybody's putting a lot of work into something that they think is going to work. And whether or not it does is kind of, we've seen dozens of projects kind of cross that bridge. But the thing that stays true, and this applies even to like the core games like Quake World, is no matter how obscure or underappreciated some game is, there's going to be like a little cloister of maybe even just a couple dozen people who are really into it, and that game is their thing. And if you can make them part of your audience, then that's its own reward, at least in my eyes. I remember years and years and years back, I was coming back from a fighting game tournament actually in New York, and I ended up on a train with he wasn't even a Marvel versus Capcom 2 guy. He was a Marvel versus Capcom 1 guy, and that put him in a minority. It was like, oh yeah, there's like a few of us who play it competitively and still spend a lot of time with it. It's always been my favorite game because of XYZ, and that just like ticked all my boxes for like, yeah, it's the same thing with people who still play Doom 2, people who still play Open Arena or whatever. Like there's going to be somebody where that's their jam.
So when you talk about the life cycles of these games, and I do wonder, like, for someone like you especially who's been doing it for so long, like, do you feel like you got that like a good idea of what a game's potential or how long it will last or anything, or have you been surprised?
Bad. I hope I'm terrible at predicting that shit, because I don't know. You do hear a lot of, okay, well, Quake Champions is going to save Quake, or if we added, clocks counting down to Quake Live that would save the scene. And you hear things every day. You're like, I get where you're coming from, but that is not going to help in the grand stage of the universe. And I don't want to say it turns you into a cynic, but at some point you either become really depressed that Quake isn't the biggest thing in the world anymore, or you look at people like BPS, people like Devastation, and you become more than satisfied with their company. And whatever else is going on is whatever else is going on. But you're playing games and doing tournaments with these people, and these people make it worth. So you stop really looking for some game to save you. I will admit that when it comes to Diabotical, shit, I wish it was running right now, man. I get what he's doing, but it would be really nice to be able to play Diabotical during quarantine. You know, it'd be great. But it was really cool during the betas to see a lot of people in there that you haven't seen before, and at some point in Quake games, running into strangers is a novel concept. And so, yeah, I think Diabotical could be pretty fun. You know, it's VQ3, but it's really polished VQ3, and maybe that's enough. And for what it's worth, it doesn't really matter what some of the intricacies of the game itself are. There's so much more context. If it was the game itself that mattered, like Wickland would still be around, Warsaw would still be kicking. I mean, yeah, Warfork, but the situation would be different than the one that we have right now. In many respects, the quality of the game is not a factor. Dirty Bomb. I've always also loved splash damage games. Dirty Bomb is there's like nothing to complain about with the game. It's got awesome sound. It's got great balance. It's got great maps. It's got good gun feel. It is like the best splash damage game, and it didn't really go anywhere, and it just kind of sat around for a while, and then Splash Damage had to pull the plug on actively developing it. And you know, in this day and age, that means anybody who was playing it is going to stop playing it. So no, I don't know if I'm able to accurately predict what's going to go big. Something like Valorant probably is, just because it's coming from Riot. It's the same thing that happened with like Overwatch, right? Where like, yeah, a lot of people are going to buy it because it's Blizzard and it's going to be produced to a AAA quality, even if the actual like core of the game is not all that interesting. So yeah, I hope Diabotical goes big for natural reasons. But I guess the biggest takeaway there is be happy with what you got.
I agree with you 100%. I don't think quality of game has virtually nothing to do with what is and what is not like the most popular thing. Like, there are better games than Counter-Strike. There are better games than League of Legends, but you know, there's like a multi-factor thing where it's like a group of people who are fucking super passionate about it. Obviously, you have to have that patronage and a successful business model, or at least someone who's willing to throw a shitload of money at it in the background, even if it isn't a successful business model. League of Legends kind of hit gold, and Riot's going to continue, I think, to try to recreate that and catch lightning in a bottle again. I don't know how Valorant's going to go. Can't say that I care too much, other than I think that high tide raises all ships, you know. So if something happens for first person shooters that's good, I think it's a net win for pretty much everybody. If someone plays Valorant and loves it and plays it for a few years, and they're like, you know, I really liked that, but I'd like something a little faster, and then they discover Quake or Warfork or whatever the fuck, I don't care. And that fills their niche. I see that as a win for us.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true. I hope it's true. I really hope that that's the way it works. We haven't really. I guess the closest thing to compare it to would be Overwatch, right? Have we had an influx? I don't know if I'm measuring like the right aspects of it either. But I hope that holds some water. And certainly it's got a lot of like 1.6 people really excited. So that's cool. Man, yeah, it's going to keep changing, but the more time goes on, the more it's like, okay, Locktar, BPS, and Milton are doing a thing. Yeah, I'm going to do that.
Yeah. I don't know. Is there anything else that's kind of like on your radar? You talked about Diabotical. I mean, I don't want to make you say anything that would put you in a bad situation. But like,
no. At this point, my only concern is if I endorse something, it's probably going to fail. That's just the way my taste kind of skew. It's always felt like the things that I enjoy are not going to be the popular thing.
Yeah.
Hunt Showdown. I fucking love that game. And for a hot minute, it was like, this game is really going to take off. And it hasn't really. That opportunity might have passed, but it's a fantastic game. And it feels like, I'm getting in on the ground floor, something that could really take off. But the things that I really get interested in that way never do. So I don't want to curse Diabotical by giving it my full verbal support. Because I hope it does too well.
What do you think about the way Champs has kind of tried to put in Clan Arena at this point? How's that settling with you?
Champions.
Oh yeah, we could open up a whole can of worms if you want to. You don't have to though.
No, it's fine. Obviously, I can't top out everything, but it's public information at this point that they are running on a shoestring amount of support from ZeniMax when it comes to budget and staffing. So things like new skins and Clan Arena, they are being accomplished by the people who have the time to accomplish those things. It's not the same thing as having the entire company behind you. It is definitely on life support in every respect. Which is a shame, because I think if it was a little bit easier to develop for the people who are now doing that, ever since Saber left the picture, that there's a lot of good to be said about Champions. The balance actually kind of worked out in a good spot. The pace of map releases is unfortunate, but that's a symptom of the general amount of attention it has failed to get. The engine is not an id engine. There's a lot of weird stuff about it, but for what it's worth, the frame rate it runs at, for the visual fidelity you get out of it, it's pretty respectable. There's a lot of good to be said there. And gameplay wise, I think it actually hit a pretty good spot, especially when it comes to duel. CTF was unfortunate. But at this point, emotionally, I think a little bit of distance is required there, just because what else is it going to do? It's done.
It sucks. I'm in kind of the same boat where I've been kind of like half and half with it for a long time, because personally, I love Sync Error and I want to support him as a person. Yeah. I think he's great. I know he has the best things, intentions in mind, and wants things to be better. And I know he's actively working on that, but it's the task that he's been given, and like what he's got to work with now is a lot. To turn that around at this point to what people are demanding, acting like there is owed to them and getting angry about. And I've had that conversation with a lot of people where it's like, I don't know why you're angry at him. Like he wants Quake to be more than you do, more than anybody does. He wants Quake to be good, and that's it. So it's just, it's just I don't know. I don't want to leave on a sour note or anything. I kind of want to have something good to say.
It's unfortunate for all of the worst reasons. It's unfortunate on technical and kind of business standpoints. The actual game itself, while it had some wrinkles, there was a lot of positive there. And when it comes to the game mode, really it was just a revival of what was the mod? Generations Arena. That's what it was. It was just you get to play anybody you want, and there's all the models, and every time the Quake 2 Super Shotgun coming out, it was that actually looks really fucking good. There's a lot of really good art there, and a lot of cool theming, and for a long time there was lore stuff going on, but you lose staff, you lose support, you lose the third party company that was developing it. What are you going to do?
Well, for your sake, Are you going to be like kind of shifting Koth toward Diabotical probably as you become more active again?
I
Or
haven't made up my mind entirely on the way it's going to go. It's always been kind of natural too, right? Because even like Quake Champions King of the Hill was Boov going like, "Hey man, let's do it." I was like, "Okay." So kind of whatever happens is whatever happens. The things that I do want to intentionally do are more things like Mapper's Mark, and making sure I've carved out weekends for Quake World stuff and especially Quake 2 stuff. You know, I said that I don't want the TS500 to be a once every 3-year thing, so probably get another one of those going. Right now, it's like, I'm sure a lot of people in quarantine are gauging whether quarantine means they're more productive or less productive. I'm definitely on the less productive side of it right now, admittedly. Just working on a lot of like home projects, but things are percolating.
And it'd be interesting actually, because you talk about Quake 2 and like supporting that community. Like it's one that feels like it's completely, fallen off to the echoes at this point. Like the last Quake 2 tournament I remember was QuakeCon. So
right. It is a tough one. For a lot of reasons. It's actually probably my favorite like duel game for sure.
Yeah.
Certainly my favorite TDM game. And there's always been like a split between mappers and modders, and the timing of the game was weird. And a lot of the Quake 2 people turned into like Action Quake 2 people, and a lot of them were RA2 people, and there was this weird bifurcation, ironically enough, from the mod scene that does make it tough to organize things. So I think with a little bit of elbow grease and a little bit of attention, it could be happening. The last tournament that I ran online almost fell to pieces because somebody was aliasing and nobody wanted to play with an alias. So, sorry, you can hear my cat in the background.
No, it's cool.
Can't wait. It started raining.
It's actually just Jahar's cat featuring Jehar on the episode today.
Exactly.
But
no, the positive thing is, if you want to do Quake content, it's always there. It's always at your fingertips. It's never going to go away. So that is a fear that is completely artificial.
That'd be cool. And I think that if you build it, they will come. If you start saying like, we're going to do these tournaments, the people will show up for sure. And I almost have no doubt about that, really. But it's interesting. We're kind of like running into that right now, where by the time this comes out, we will have done a Clan Arena tournament, and that was like the big thing was for Warfork. And that there's there's this split, as you described, the splits between forks and mods and versions and everything, and that they exist. And one of them is like, so these CA people, and that's not me. I'm not going to claim like I'm any kind of expert on Warfork or Warsow Clan Arena at all. In no way do I claim to be an expert, but it's like, well, we put out the map pool, and we're trying to like bring in some maps that maybe weren't featured in Warsow like that prominently, or like perhaps an Instagib map that we think would work really well for this. And and the backlash is there's always two sides. There's people that are just glad to have a tournament and glad to try something new and glad to have young people trying a game that's considerably kind of old. And then there's a group of people that just want it to be like the good old days again. And I'm like, it's never going to be like the good old days again, ever. Forget about that. The game industry's moved on without us. Like, if you want to, if you want to make money in this, you can do something else. That's not what this is about necessarily, but it's about trying to keep a community going and just having fun. And I feel like the fun gets sucked out of it when people start acting like that. Like, are you playing Clan Arena seriously? Come on. It's like the most not serious game mode ever in the existence of competitive game modes.
I mean, that does kind of go back to, no matter what the game or mode is, there are people who take it seriously, and that always impresses me more than anything else. And one of the things that was going to be happening last month, actually, was going to be this LAN party we were going to be having here at the house, centered around Command & Conquer Renegade. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to reach out to more Renegade people and make sure that we were running it right and getting on some good maps and making it a good viewing experience for them. So it's, it's a proper Renegade tournament and not some facsimile of it. I was all geared up for that too. I'm kind of pissed off about stupid virus, stupid world ending. Because yeah, we had everything in place for that. Like we were good to go. And so that was going to be like every other month too for the entire year. So I guess that's going to be a 2021 project instead of a 2020 project.
Man, it's a good reset button. I'm trying to think about it like that, where it's for that sort of thing. Unfortunately for you, we're not going to be having a lot of LAN parties. What's going to happen is remote game development companies are fucking killing it right now. They have nothing to do but just make awesome shit. Content creators that don't rely on tournaments like yourself and myself or whatever. Luckily I have the podcast and you have like Mapper's Mark and stuff like that. Like as kind of you can do that or whatever, or you can plan these things out. But it's hard to say, like you can't put a date on it yet. It's just a weird time and it's unprecedented and everything. But I feel like there are a lot of positives that we're not really.
And that's one of the two-sided things of it is, like you said, a lot of content producers are making stuff and I could be one of those people, but at the same time, I'm also seeing this as a time to like catch up on a lot of things I wish I had been playing. And like, there's new Quake maps coming out all the time. There was a jam that was just released. Colin has been putting out a lot of Quake 2 content, a lot of single player stuff there, and working on some of his own Unity stuff as well. There's a lot of like Thief levels to play. It was just like the 20th anniversary or whatever of Thief 2, so they just put out a big old map pack. So there's a lot of stuff to play. So on one hand, I want to be a content creator, but on the other hand, I just want to like
consume
and consume
content. Yeah,
input. Yeah,
that's why I think Civi's get the best job in the world. Him and Icarus and Decina, like their content creation just relies on other people's content to, like, and then they get to make these awesome fucking videos and just talk about it, which is great. You know, like, that's fucking cool. And I'm glad they do it because it tells me what's good and what's not, or at least lets me make an informed decision before I go spending my hard-earned money or whatever. But
well, fortunately, when it comes to these scenes, money's not too much of an object. You know, I've got 1 billion hours of Quake and Doom and Thief levels to play, and I'm never going to run out.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I'll tell people all the time. Like, if you want the most bang for your buck money wise, I'm like, if you get Quake or just Doom 2, just the IWAD for Doom 2, you will never, ever, ever run out of games to play. Ever. Like,
nope.
And a wide variety of shit to do. Like, now, never has there been a better time for like single player or cooperative Doom 2 play. Like, forget about the competitive shit.
Yeah, I should really do more co-op stuff. Co-op Doom 2 is something that nothing else really does well. There aren't a whole lot of like co-op first-person shooters, ironically enough. There's a few, just not a lot. And none
Deep
of them
Rock?
quite behave like Doom. The what?
Deep Rock Galactic, have you played that?
I have not.
It's really fun. I'm not going to say plays like Doom, but it gives me kind of that same, it scratches the same itch that playing survival kind of does too, because it's, 4 folks, you're playing as like space dwarves, you're shooting like giant like alien monsters that are, it's basically like if Snow White and the 7 Dwarves were mining a planet and they had Starship Troopers the game. That's how I would describe it. It's pretty fun. So you've like objective, like go in and get all this fucking mineral or whatever, and then fight through waves of enemies just like you do in Doom until you get out. And then you have like an escape time. Like, well, all 4 of us better be out of here in 5 minutes or we're all gonna die. And and it's like a really well supported game. There's lots of like
screenshots. Shit, I was gonna go this morning without having another game to play. Fuck.
I'm being honest. Like the first time I played it, because it was one of those games that I had on my radar for a long time, but I'm like, I don't know if it's really for me. And finally, someone gifted it to me, and now I'm like buying copies for other people because like shit, there's not a lot of awesome games out there that scratch the same itch that Doom does for me, and
I dig it. Yeah,
that deserves $1 in my opinion. But
that does. Shit.
But yeah,
I might be doing that this afternoon. Yeah, quarantine is something that we've all been at least mentally preparing for our entire lives. We're ready for this.
Well, the gamers are doing great, man. Like,
Yeah,
I'm fine.
You hear
My
other
wife
people
is
are like, I've been inside the house for 4 days and I'm so bored. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is the best.
It's you could go to cyberspace right now and see the
I won't say we're not going crazy, but we're not bored.
I was crazy before this, and I'm a bit just as crazy now as before. Like
Ted Kaczynski spent weeks in his cabin, and look what he accomplished.
He's world famous. He's way more famous than you'll ever be.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. I really
lesson for the day.
I really enjoyed spending time with you. Just like as someone that I admire, like you've been amazing, and I appreciate it more than anything. Is there anything that you want to plug or shout out before we get out of here?
I mean, that admiration goes both ways. It's I don't want to say it's rare to run into people who kind of get it, because in this community, you run into those people all the time because they just kind of like rise up, and yourself included. So keep doing what you're doing, man. It's really great, and I definitely want to collaborate more on like future tournaments. Having multiple streams for a single tournament is such a beautiful thing. So let's do more of that.
Yeah, if you got something you want done, hit me up, dude. I'm there. I'm like, right, if you give me that phone call or whatever it is, I got you. But as I told Rose, like the two of you as a power couple are my heroes, literally. Like people like, who do you look up to? Jehar, first guy. And I'm not joking about that. Like I fucking love you, man. So thank you for just being a kind and generous person to look up to, and generous with your information and time. And next time I message you about Xandronum shit, message me back. I'm kidding, but it's fine.
I'm not. That's the couple part of the power couple. Like she will get me to respond to things because I'm notoriously bad at it.
Nah, it's fine. I figured it out anyway. I didn't even need you. But this has been a great episode, and it is almost as good as the one with Rose. So mission accomplished. And I'll see you around.
All right, man. Have a good one.
All right, thank you to Jehar for doing the show. It was amazing. I'm really happy we had him on. Finally, thank you to RottenRose for everything that she does. Go back and check out her episode on In the Keep from a while back. I think it was October last year. I'll put it in the notes. Thank you to Sinker and the whole crew working on Quake Champions, and for everybody behind Quakecon every year. It's an amazing event. All of these stuff. QHLan, BPS, Locktar, Milton. You guys know what's up. I love y'all. Thank you again to all of the supporters of The Keep, whether that be just the people who love the show and keep, tuning in every week. Thank you for doing that. Please keep doing so. And especially thank you to the people who are donating with our Amazon affiliate link or Patreon or through our PayPal or whatever the fucking case is. We appreciate all of you, and I hope y'all are rocking those In The Keep t-shirts proudly. Also, if you want an In The Keep t-shirt, but you didn't get into this first round Patreon order, we still have a few available, or you can just order one on Redbubble. Either way, but yeah, if you give over $25 on our Patreon, we will mail you a t-shirt, and it's going to be a really nice, high-quality t-shirt, so keep that in mind. Also, I have a couple of announcements. I promised you I would give you more news on the Big Doom event, so here it is from Devastation. The massive multiplayer online Doom experience, number 1, May 23rd, 3 p.m. Eastern to 7 p.m. Eastern. There will be multiple 10-player servers across the world, a 50-map compilation. The goal is to have 100-plus players at any given time during that period. And word around the campfire is that if this is a success, the next one they'll go for like 50-player FFAs all in one tournament and so on and so forth. But if you want more information on that, go over to doomfederation.com. That's doomfederation.com. And while we're talking Doom events, I also want to go ahead and shout out the Deaf Awareness Doom 2 tournament hosted by the folks over at SilentGamers.org. They are going to be hosting the tourney with the No Sound mod, which is a WOD created by the guys over at Z-Damon, which will essentially make all the players play as if they were deaf or hard of hearing to raise awareness. So that's May the 8th of 2020. So if you're listening to this as it drops, that's this Friday. Also, I think they're going to be doing some Quake Live stuff as well, but get all your information once again over at www.silentgamers.org. Tell them Motherload sent you. That's it for me today. You guys are all fucking awesome for sticking in there. Thanks for hanging around to the end to hear these plugs. Hang in there out there. I know it's getting weirder and weirder every day, but I promise it's going to get better. I'm here for you. The Keep is here for you. Till next time, y'all. Stay in the Keep.